guys, and welcome to the Moms and Mysteries podcast, a true crime podcast featuring myself, Mandy, and my dear friend, Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Veruca of the Sea. How are you doing today?
Wait, is it? Oh, the Veruca salt of the sea. Yes. I'm not too salty today, I guess.
Ooh.
I feel pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. Real quick, we'll explain the Veruca salt thing in a minute, but my daughter turned 16 this week, and I'm kind of having a moment.
Mind blown.
Yeah. She's so great and wonderful, and I adore her, and it's so cool to see her grow up. But when we started this, our older ones were both 9. Is that right?
I don't think so.
8?
Wait, that can't be right.
Okay.
Don't ask me to do math in real time.
8 years ago. 8. They would have been 8 years old. So like half of their lives we've been doing this.
Yes, it is truly wild to think that they're turning 16 this year.
It's got me a little emotional, and I try not to be emotional, but I guess I'm also old, so having a 16-year-old...
It's fine. We can be emotional about our babies turning 16. That's like a huge milestone.
It is. So anyway, I adore her, and I'm very excited for her and what life has in store. And she'll never hear this because there's no way she listens to our show.
Right. Does she have any big plans for her, how she's going to celebrate this year?
Yes. So this weekend, I'm bringing her and 2 of her friends to the beach, and we're staying like in an Airbnb. They're just like...
I love that. That's so nice.
Yeah. It's like she wanted like a SpongeBob birthday kind of thing. So like... It's not going to be a wild party breaking out to meet boys kind of thing, which is nice. So it'll just be very low key, and they're excited to like go to the boardwalk and stuff like that. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. And I just get to like be a little bit behind them, doing everything and still like chaperoning. So
yes, of course. Oh my gosh. Well, I hope that she has the best day with her friends and you, of course.
Yeah.
I know that she will appreciate having you there. Maybe not on the day, but later on, she'll appreciate that you were there.
I mean, I can drive, so that's your choice. But Mandy, I mentioned Veruca salt here, or the Veruca salt of the sea, because recently we did a bonus episode where you talked about your time at sea and your cruise. And anyway, so it just reminded me of that. And if you're interested in hearing bonus episodes like that, just chat episodes or the things like Jerry Springer. We're doing 2-part episodes of episode 1 and episode 2 of the Jerry Springer documentary on Netflix, and how we can't believe any of us survived during that time and don't have really, really sick brains. Anyway, you can find that at patreon.com/momsandmysteries podcast or on Apple Podcast subscriptions.
You really nailed like a very long stream of consciousness, like perfectly put it into words.
Perfectly. Okay, I'll take it. Let's go. Let's do this.
All right, so we will get right into the story for this week. On a quiet night in June of 1982, 20-year-old Kelly Bergh Dove was alone working the graveyard shift at the Imperial Gas Station in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The early part of her shift really just ticked by uneventfully until 2:27 a.m. when Kelly made the first of 3 chilling calls to the police. Kelly reported that she had received an obscene phone call, and then she reported that she noticed a suspicious person lurking outside the gas station and a silver or gray-colored car parked outside. Just minutes later at 2:30 a.m., during her third desperate attempt at calling for help, Kelly was abducted while on the phone with the dispatcher. Her case has left more questions than answers and has remained a haunting mystery for over 40 years. And Kelly's sister Elaine actually was able to meet with Haley and help us put this episode together, so we just want to say a very special thank you to Elaine for allowing us to share her sister's story and for helping make this episode possible.
Kelly's story began on August 30th, 1961 in Virginia, where she was born to parents Rachel and Ernest Parnell. Kelly was one of 5 kids, and she grew up as the middle child amongst her siblings. She had 2 sisters, 1 brother, and a foster sister. Kelly was always extremely close with her family, especially her younger sister Elaine. The 2 not only shared a bedroom, but they also had a very special bond. Life, of course, wasn't without challenges, though, and Kelly's parents separated when she was still young. Her mom remarried a man named Fred Bergh in 1971, and he went on to adopt Kelly and her siblings. Fred became the dad they all cherished, so when we refer to Kelly's father throughout this episode, just know that we're actually speaking about Fred. In 1975, the family moved to the small town of Bridgewater, Virginia, where they found a quieter life in the close-knit community about 20 minutes away from the larger Harrisonburg area, which is actually home to James Madison University. At the time, the town of Bridgewater had a population of about 3,000 people. Kelly was the kind of person who really lived her life boldly and fearlessly. Elaine recalled her sister as being fun-loving and creative and said she never shied away from a challenge. Kelly was also someone who stood her ground and she stood up for herself, like the time a boy pulled down her tube top and she punched him without hesitation. Love it. Here for it.
Me too. That's what when I read that little detail, I was like, wow, you go, girl.
Exactly. Elaine, when speaking about Kelly, said if someone bothered her, she would speak her mind. Her fearlessness was evident in her athletic side as well. Kelly could do strings of back handsprings, skateboard barefoot down steep hills, and she could tackle any new experience with an enthusiastic sense of adventure. Elaine said that Kelly's daring spirit often made her feel invincible too. Kelly always encouraged Elaine to try new things, and she cheered her on. But Kelly also had a softer side about her. She loved animals, and she'd push the family cat around in a doll carriage. She was very imaginative and didn't mind hanging out in her own company if no one was around to play with or to hang out. One of Elaine's favorite memories of Kelly perfectly captures the mischievous and playful bond that the two shared. So as the story goes, it was Christmas time, and when the phone rang, both of the sisters sprinted over to answer it and accidentally knocked down the whole Christmas tree in their rush to get to the phone. But before their parents came into the room, the girls were crawling out from under the tree and trying to stand it back up, hoping no one would really notice. I love that. And their dad ended up tying the tree to the wall to prevent another holiday mishap.
I love that too. The dad was just like, you know what? Like, we'll just tie the tree to the wall and
exactly.
We'll move on.
And just like the urgency when you're younger, like back in the day where the phone rings and you got to have a chance to get it. You don't know. There's no caller ID. There's
it could be anyone.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be Publishers Clearinghouse. You don't know.
You
so
never know.
Get it. Yeah. So I just love that story.
Kelly's teen years brought some big changes. While she was in high school, mutual friends introduced her to Dale Dove, a construction worker that was 5 years older than her. But despite their age gap, the two of them fell for each other, and Kelly soon got pregnant at the age of 15. Fred was initially upset about the pregnancy, but Dale promised to take care of Kelly and the baby and said he wanted to get married and be there for his family. And Fred agreed to this on one term, and that was that Kelly must finish high school. And she did. She worked really hard and graduated early, all while raising her baby girl Tammy, who was born in December of 1977. Despite being young herself, Kelly was really excited to be a mom. While she was still pregnant, she and Dale moved into an apartment about 20 minutes away from Kelly's parents. Elaine, though, was really devastated when Kelly moved out, and she just struggled to adjust to a life without her sister being there 24/7. As we said, they shared a room. They had really just grown up and had this very special bond, so you can just imagine that. Like, now you're in your room, your sister's gone. Like, she really struggled with that. But Kelly really took to motherhood like a pro. She was loving and resilient, and even though she was a little scared about having a baby so young, she doted on her daughter and she worked at the gas station to provide for her. Kelly's older sister, Debbie, was actually the manager at the gas station, which was located near James Madison University on an isolated stretch of road. And it was kind of a family affair at the gas station, with Debbie not only managing the store, but Kelly's two other sisters also worked there as well. There was a pretty good chance that someone from the family was going to be in the gas station at any given time. Elaine said Kelly worked a lot, but she spent all of her free time with Tammy. Elaine, who was 13 when Kelly moved out, would always go over and visit on the weekends to hang out with Kelly and the baby. When Kelly was working, a babysitter kept Tammy in Bridgewater.
According to Kelly's mom, Rachel, Kelly had big dreams, and she wanted to go back to school and become a nurse so that she could give herself and Tammy a better future. She actually registered for classes at Blue Ridge Community College, and she had plans to start in September of 1982. Meanwhile, she worked tirelessly, and she saved every penny she made at the gas station because she wanted to pay for her education herself. At some point, Kelly asked her parents if she and Tammy could temporarily move in with them while she was looking for a place of her own, and so they could help her while she was going to college. At this point, she was still with Dale, but their relationship was fizzling out, and it's likely that Kelly was going to end things. So Kelly was really just trying to get her ducks in a row so that she could take care of Tammy. Tragically, Kelly's dreams and plans were cut short on June 18th, 1982. She actually wasn't supposed to be working that night, but her sister had asked her to swap shifts at the last minute, and Kelly agreed. While it was normal for the siblings to work the overnight shifts, Kelly normally worked the day shift. Dale dropped her off at the gas station at 10 p.m. That night, Elaine stopped by the gas station, as she often did when one of her sisters was working. Elaine said that night she was upset by something her other sister Debbie said to her, so she went to the bathroom and Kelly followed behind her to cheer her up. Kelly told Elaine that she'd see her over the next weekend, which was actually Father's Day weekend, and they told each other they loved each other before Elaine left. But then, in the early hours of June 18th, Kelly made a series of increasingly desperate calls to 911. The first call came in at 2:27. Kelly was really calm and told the dispatcher that she was working at the gas station and that a man had called the store and said obscene things. She also mentioned that a guy had come in earlier that night and that he was dressed improperly. Those were her words. But she didn't really elaborate on what that meant. She said she ignored the guy, but thinks he was the one who called because he drove through the parking lot a few seconds before the phone rang. Kelly asked if they could send an officer to keep an eye on her. Police speculated that the man may have exposed himself to Kelly. It was actually not uncommon for the female employees at the gas station to receive inappropriate calls or deal with inappropriate behavior. 2 minutes after the first call, it's now 2:29 a.m., Kelly calls 911 again and reports that the same man was now outside the station.
Oh my gosh, terrifying.
Absolutely. She said he was in a silver or gray car, possibly a Ford, and that he had come into the gas station and harassed her, and he was now lingering outside. She was clearly uneasy, but she was still professional and calm as she relayed what was happening to the dispatcher. At 2:30 a.m., Kelly made her third and final call to 911. This time, Kelly's voice was full of fear and urgency as she said, quote, "Please hurry, he's back." She said that the man had called her from a payphone outside the gas station and had made obscene comments. Suddenly, though, the line went dead. Police later said that a shuffling sound could be heard in the background, followed by the phone slamming down. By the time police arrived at the gas station just 1 minute later, Kelly was gone. And we still have more to get into after a quick break to hear a word from this week's sponsors. After the holiday hustle, there's really nothing like giving your home a little TLC. Mandy, I don't know about you, but it always feels good to reclaim balance and get everything back into routine, which I do know you are very, very fond of. One thing I did for the new year, I actually added a pizza oven to my backyard from Wayfair.
Oh, I love that. What made you pick a pizza oven, though?
Well, Mandy, my son's newest hyperfixation is making pizzas, which is honestly my favorite of all of his obsessions. So when I saw that Wayfair had a pizza oven that doubled as a fire pit, I knew it was a perfect fit. And get this, it arrived in just 1 day. It's such a game changer for our weekends, weeknights, or whenever the mood strikes him.
Wow, that's awesome. It's great that you could get it so fast, and I bet it makes those pizza nights even more fun.
Absolutely, and it really looks amazing in the backyard. It's really just perfect for our family. And the best part, Wayfair has everything you need to refresh your space, from decor to furniture, all within your budget. Whether it's a pizza oven or new lighting for the living room, Wayfair's got you covered.
And free fast delivery? I'm sold. Wayfair really does make it easy to tackle home projects this year. Check them out for all your spring essentials. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. We all take supplements. Or at least we should. But why do so many supplement companies think it's okay to charge outrageous prices for products that aren't even that special? It's really frustrating to say the least. That's why I'm so excited to tell you about Live Good, a brand that's seriously changing the game. Live Good believes everyone deserves access to high-quality supplements without the crazy markups. They've got premium products created by top natural health experts, and they cut out the middleman to keep the prices nice and low. I recently tried their creatine because I like to stay in shape, and since I started using it, I've noticed a big difference in my endurance and recovery, and my workouts have never felt better. They've got everything you need: organic super greens, multivitamins, protein powder, collagen, detox, and more, with all the same high quality and low prices. It's no wonder they're the fastest growing supplement brand on the planet, with over 1.5 million customers. If you're not on board yet, what are you waiting for?
Ready to make the switch and start saving? We'll make it even easier for you. Use our link and you can save an additional 10% off your first order on top of the already lowest prices. Just go to livegood.com/moms to save 10% on your first order. That's livegood.com/moms. Don't miss out on this opportunity to invest in your health without overspending. And now back to the episode.
Before the break, we were getting into the story of the abduction of Kelly Bergh, a 20-year-old woman who vanished while she was working an overnight shift at a gas station in Virginia. Kelly's mom, Rachel, said that when she listened to the 911 calls her daughter made, she could hear Kelly's fear intensify with each call. And by the third call, it was clear that she was panicked. Her sister Elaine later said that Kelly was normally somebody who wasn't afraid of anything. She described her sister as being even what you might call scrappy. So hearing her sound so scared was very unusual, and her family knew that she truly must have been very frightened. The family was also grappling with anger over the police response time, with Rachel telling the media that she felt like the police should have been more concerned and should have gone out on the first call rather than waiting for the second or third one. She said she believed that Kelly was staying calm during the second call because she believed that help was actually on the way already. The lead investigator later did admit that a quicker response might have changed the outcome, though he said that he wished the seriousness of the situation had been made more clear. Which, I feel like that's kind of a frustrating response because she called 911, which is usually pretty serious.
Right. That's actually the first serious step you take when something is serious.
Exactly. So I feel like that should have been enough to convey that it was an emergency, but I digress. A patrol officer arrived at the gas station at 2:31 a.m., just 1 minute after Kelly's final call, which had ended so abruptly. But by that point, the scene was eerily quiet. The store was empty inside, but there was no sign of a struggle. Kelly's purse, which had money inside, had been left behind the counter along with a magazine that she had been reading. And there was a partially smoked cigarette and an ashtray on the counter. The cash register in the gas station was also untouched and had no cash missing. Lieutenant Myers, an investigator with the police department, later said that it looked as though someone had just taken a quick break to the restroom or stepped out for just a second. The case was quickly classified as an abduction. At first, the police believed that Kelly might have been taken in her own car since there were no other vehicles in the parking lot. But they soon learned that her husband Dale had actually dropped her off that night, and Kelly didn't even have a vehicle there. Then they turned their attention to the silver or gray Ford that Kelly described in her 911 calls. But they weren't really even sure the description was entirely accurate because she would have been looking through the window, and of course it was dark outside, but at least it was a start. Investigators determined that the abduction likely happened very quickly, likely in as little as 15 seconds, which is absolutely horrific to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that happening so fast. Her family and investigators agreed that whoever took Kelly must have been armed because there's no way Kelly would have gone without a fight otherwise. They feel sure that the man was armed and that he took her by surprise. The door to the gas station was no more than 10 feet away from the phone that Kelly would have been using, so the police theorized that her abductor had pulled his car up to the door, which made it easier to quickly force Kelly into the vehicle. Elaine remembers her mom's voice when she found out the horrifying news. She said, quote, "They can't find Kelly. We need to find her." The family rushed to the gas station where they searched in the field nearby, but their efforts turned up nothing. Kelly had seemingly vanished, and the nightmare was just beginning for her family.
When Kelly's family arrived at the gas station, they were shocked to see that the scene had not even been secured, despite police having already arrived. There was actually no police tape up, and customers were still going in thinking that the store was open. No fingerprints were taken, and it seemed like nothing was really being done to investigate a crime. Kelly's mom, Rachel, was actually the one who suggested that the police do something to secure the scene, and she was treated rudely and dismissively. One encounter with Lieutenant Myers actually left Rachel in tears. The detective kept referring to Kelly as that woman in news interviews rather than by her name, which was really part of a pattern of insensitivity that left Kelly's family feeling disrespected and unsupported during one of the most frightening moments of their lives. Police said that taking fingerprints at the scene would be futile due to the high volume of people that come and go from the gas station. But Kelly's family thought that was a poor explanation and that this early misstep undermined the investigation. Despite the early shortcoming, investigators worked to piece together a timeline. They conducted interviews with employees and customers of nearby businesses and determined that Kelly was last seen at about 2:15 a.m., which was just 12 minutes before she made the first 911 call. Police focused on this narrow window as they began to search for her abductor. An employee from a nearby convenience store told police about a man driving a two-tone silver car. This employee saw the car circling the area multiple times on the night of Kelly's disappearance, with the last sighting about 30 minutes before she vanished. The driver of the car was described as being a thin, white male between the ages of 20 and 25 with shoulder-length blonde hair who was wearing a light-colored shirt. The employee also told the police that the same man had exposed himself to a female employee at their store just 2 weeks earlier. A composite sketch of the man was created and widely distributed, but it offered really very little help as it resembled quite a few young men at James Madison University, which was just a mile away.
As the investigation was going on, Kelly's family took matters into their own hands and started searching for her or for any clues that might lead to her whereabouts. Kelly's best friend, Connie, had her husband search nearby creeks, and Kelly's mom, Rachel, took her dog to search. Kelly's husband, Dale, drove aimlessly through the streets looking for any sign of her. He told the Associated Press, quote, "I know it's a wild goose chase, but it's better than sitting around." Kelly's sister, Debbie, joined in the efforts by venturing into the nearby mountains in a four-wheel drive vehicle, hoping to spot anything that might lead to her sister. The family also kept an eye out for cars and for men that matched the descriptions that were provided in the investigation, particularly the silver two-tone car and the thin blonde-haired man. Since Dale was Kelly's husband, of course, he was questioned multiple times to explore any potential connection that he might have to her disappearance, but they never found anything that tied him to it. At first, Kelly's dad entertained the idea that Dale could have still been indirectly involved, such as by hiring someone, and Elaine admitted that she had also thought about that too on different occasions, but Dale was never formally accused of any wrongdoing, and the case eventually ended up pointing to a different suspect entirely, as we will get into, and Kelly's family no longer thinks that Dale had anything to do with it. On June 29th, 1982, a $1,000 reward was offered by an anonymous citizen, which would be equal to over $3,400 today. But still, police had no promising leads, and they admitted in a press conference that they learned absolutely nothing in the case so far. They said they were investigating reports of similar incidents in Virginia and beyond, and they'd chased down dozens of tips, but they'd all led to dead ends. As time went on, investigators concluded that Kelly was not specifically targeted and her abduction was likely a crime of opportunity that was carried out by a man who noticed that she was working alone at an isolated gas station late at night. The fact that the crime was so random made solving it all the more difficult, as there was no physical evidence or clear suspects, and eventually the investigation stalled.
So weeks turned into months without progress, and by late July, it had been 6 weeks since Kelly was abducted, and still there were no answers. Lieutenant Myers sat down with the media and gave an update, admitting that with each passing day, the chance of finding Kelly alive were growing slimmer. The investigation continued to focus heavily on men who had a history of sexual offenses or other unusual sexual behaviors, as they believed that the crime may have been sexually motivated due to the obscene phone calls that Kelly received moments before she was taken. These type of calls had been relatively frequent, but after Kelly's disappearance, they only received one such call. In a desperate attempt to find a break in the case, The police department consulted a psychic for the first time in its history, but Lieutenant Myers declined to give any specifics about what insights the psychic may have had, only saying, "We're willing to try anything." By far, the most leads came from members of the community. Callers pointed out different shady characters or men who owned vehicles resembling the one that Kelly had described. Some callers mentioned seeing individuals behaving suspiciously, but nothing was really leading anywhere. At one point in the investigation, Lieutenant Myers said that this case was probably the most challenging thing he'd ever gotten himself into in his 31 years working for the Harrisonburg Police Department. He said, quote, "Sooner or later, we're going to get a break on it. We will find that woman," end quote. Which again, there he is, saying that woman. She has a name. Police dismissed any notion that Kelly had simply run away and said they had ruled that out very early on. It was clear that she did not leave voluntarily. Dale agreed and said, quote, "There's no way she would have gone off on her own, not with money and cigarettes there and the magazine open and her little girl," end quote. Dale said that he had to keep hoping even though he knew the odds were against her. Dale also revealed that their 4-year-old daughter, Tammy, had come to terms with the situation as much as a young child possibly could, and that she had accepted the explanation that somebody took her mother. In the aftermath of Kelly's disappearance, Dale agreed to let her parents take custody of Tammy. The Bergh family felt that this was the best arrangement, and Dale agreed that it was really in Tammy's best interest.
As the search for Kelly entered its second year, the family and police remained haunted by her absence. By January of 1983, Lieutenant Myers gave an update on the case, and this time he revealed some of the previously undisclosed details about the involvement of a psychic in the investigation. He said the psychic claimed to channel both Kelly's and her abductor's perspectives and described roads, a residence, and a burial site. Many of the descriptions appeared to match areas in Rockingham County, which reignited the investigation's focus on these local regions. The psychic also suggested that the abductor might drive a refrigerated truck and possibly had a knee injury. But despite these potential leads, no significant progress was made. Lieutenant Myers also shared an unusual piece of evidence from another informant who had undergone hypnosis. This one I thought was kind of interesting because I'm interested in hypnosis for sure. I'm fascinated by it, at least. I will say that. But this informant was able to recall nearly all of the characters of a license plate seen on a silver car around the time of Kelly's disappearance. And this clue generated hundreds of new leads, including one car registered to somebody who was aboard a ship at sea. But despite a huge follow-up effort, the trail once again ran cold. Lieutenant Myers said that the investigation had explored every possible angle, but said, since we got no leads that she was alive, since she was a family woman, she's dead, and she's buried within 50 miles. I feel like this guy just does not have a way with words.
No. Well, he does, but they're all wrong.
They're terrible.
They're not great.
It's a terrible way with words, yeah. He reiterated that the police, the family, and even the FBI had all been involved in the search for Kelly, and that still nothing had turned up. Rachel was more frustrated than ever and thought that the police had missed critical opportunities to conduct a thorough investigation right from the beginning. But she tried holding on to the hope that her daughter would be found. However, the weight of the uncertainty was very overwhelming. Rachel said she couldn't even make the drive to work in the morning without wondering whether she was passing Kelly's body along her route. Eventually, Fred, Rachel, and Tammy moved away from Virginia, which Rachel said was necessary to preserve her mental health because she said being there was destroying her. But despite being miles from where the tragedy occurred, the Bergh family never gave up hope that one day they would find out the truth. And we have more to get into after one last break to hear a word from this week's sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by Greenlight. You know, the new year is the perfect time to start teaching your kids important life skills, and one I'm focusing on this year is financial literacy, and that's why we're using Greenlight.
I love how Greenlight helps teach my kids how to save, spend, and even invest. It's like setting them up for success in a fun way. And you can set up chores with Greenlight, so it's actually perfect for teaching responsibility.
Exactly. My son loves it. Well, he loves the money and he's so on the chores. But I've been able to set up some recurring chores for him and he gets an allowance for doing them. It's amazing to see him learning how to manage his money. Plus, it really makes my life easier. You get your money when you do your chores. Easy peasy.
And it's such a great tool for families to stay on track. With Greenlight, you can send money directly to their debit cards, manage their spending, and even help them save. It's honestly a game changer.
And right now, you can get started with a risk-free trial. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/moms. That's greenlight.com/moms to get started. Greenlight.com/moms. You know, every new year comes with a lot of new year, new me talk. But this year, I'm keeping one thing from 2024, Luria Whole Body Deodorant.
Oh, I am totally with you on that one. I love how it keeps me feeling fresh all day long, and I'm definitely not leaving that behind. From my pits to my feet.
Same. It's something that gives you so much confidence that you really never have to worry about odors, and the scents are amazing. Clean Tangerine is actually my go-to, plus I can use it anywhere at any time.
Totally. And it's safe to use on your whole body, even places I didn't know I needed deodorant. Lumi was created by an OBGYN, so I know it's both effective and gentle. And the best part, you can get 15% off with the code MOMS. It's like treating yourself and your whole body.
Lumi Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for listeners, new customers get 15% off all Lumi products with our exclusive code. And if you combine the 15% off with the already discounted starter pack, that equals over 40% off their starter pack. Use code MOMS for 15% off your first purchase at LumiDeodorant.com. That's code MOMS at LumiDeodorant.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Lumi. Remember way back in 2005 when the cool thing to do was to overdraw your lips and to literally bedazzle everything, anything and everything? Well, we've definitely as a society leveled up since then, and thank goodness for that. And while we no longer have this obsession with shiny things, I mean, sometimes we do, and duck lips, thank goodness there's not a lot of those anymore, maybe it's actually time for our wardrobe to elevate as well. And that's where Daily Look comes in. It's the #1 highest rated premium personal styling service for women. There's no algorithms, just real personal stylists who understand your body shape, preferences, and lifestyle. I filled out my style quiz and my stylist Esperanza sent me a wrap dress that fits like a glove, which is really no small feat when you're tall. She nailed it. She also had a pair of these pleated dress pants in the box that I love so much. I actually can't wait to go out and wear them, which I promise you, yes, this is truly Melissa. And yes, I really said I want to leave my house just so I can wear these pants. Honestly, Daily Look is a game changer. You receive a curated box with up to 12 hand-selected items, all specifically picked with your wants and needs at the forefront. With sizes from extra small to 3X, 0 to 24, and brands like Kate Spade, Good American, and more, you'll fall in love with Daily Look as much as I did. Plus, free shipping both ways makes it easy to try on without any pressure. What's not to love? It's time to get your own personal stylist with Daily Look. Head to dailylook.com to take your style quiz and use code MOM50 for 50% off your first order. Once again, that's dailylook.com for 50% off, and make sure you use our promo code MOM50 so they know we sent you. One last time, dailylook.com and promo code MOM50. And now back to the episode. So before the break, we were talking about the investigation into Kelly's disappearance, and her parents at this point really just had to move away with her daughter Tammy to kind of get away and to be able to really reset their lives. And as the years passed, there were sporadic attempts to revive interest and re-examine potential leads, but by the early 90s, the media had shifted its attention elsewhere for the most part, leaving Kelly's family burdened with so many unanswered questions. At one point, one possible lead was found when Kelly's mom, Rachel, saw a car that was parked on the street that actually matched the description of the car Kelly reported in her 911 call. The police actually asked the owner of the car if they could search it, and the owner agreed. Police vacuumed the trunk and placed what was found in evidence. At some point, Rachel requested that the Virginia Bureau of Investigation get involved in the case, which actually upset Lieutenant Myers. He felt that Rachel was undermining his authority in the case. But in 1989, when the case still hadn't been solved after 8 years, Kelly was declared dead. In 1993, it was reported that there might be a link between Kelly's abduction and another case involving 18-year-old Paula Jean Chandler. Paula Jean was a restaurant worker who went missing from a nearby town just 1 day after Kelly was abducted. Paula's body was found 2 days later in a reservoir near Charlottesville, and her murder remains unsolved to this day. It was also thought that the disappearance of a 12-year-old girl named Katie Worski in Charlottesville, who went missing around the same time, could be linked. Katie was never found, and her remains have never been recovered. But a 23-year-old man named Glenn Barker was convicted of murdering her. He was sentenced to just 18 years. Glenn Barker had previously abducted an 18-year-old woman at knife point, but this woman escaped. Glenn was arrested, but he was allowed to plead guilty to the lesser charge of assault. Additionally, Glenn drove a car that matched the general description of the vehicle in Kelly's case and was known to frequent the area. To make things even more suspicious, to me this was the most suspicious, it was learned that Glenn actually painted his car a different color within days of Kelly going missing. The police told the Daily Progress that while they did briefly view Glenn as a suspect in Kelly's disappearance, they ruled him out as a serious suspect after they identified another car that also matched the description. This blows my mind because...
Me too.
How on earth are you going to have somebody who matches his description, who has a history of hurting women, and say, well, there's another car. Let's go look at another silver car. That's crazy. So Glenn was never interviewed in regards to Kelly's case, but police said they didn't totally eliminate him as a suspect. They just didn't have any other evidence that tied him to the case either.
Well, they didn't really look for any, to be fair.
Absolutely. So Rachel's frustration with the investigation was really a focal point of her public statements. She was fed up with what she felt was a lack of cooperation and the reluctance to pursue actual leads, especially those involving Glenn Barker. She told the media, quote, "If they had done their job right from the beginning, maybe we wouldn't still be wondering what happened to Kelly," end quote.
In 1992, Glenn Barker was released from prison for killing Katie Worski. He didn't even serve half of his sentence. Later that year, he gave an interview where he just randomly mentioned other unsolved cases. And although his recollection of and the timing of the exact events was a little bit off, it was clear to the police that he was referring to the killing of Paula Jean Chandler and the disappearance of Kelly Bergh. Glenn claimed he brought up these cases to illustrate how the police were just under a lot of pressure to find the person or people who were responsible in Katie's case because of these other two victims, and that he had just been picked up along the way because the police just had to arrest someone. So there were very few updates in the media after this, and it appears that Glenn was ruled out in Kelly and Paula's cases. But interestingly, in 1993, he was caught with a pellet gun and handcuffs, which police believed was what they were calling a murder-rape kit. So that's terrifying. And then in 1996, a woman that Glenn was dating was actually found murdered along with her daughter. Glenn was not charged in that case, but many believe that he was responsible. In the years following Kelly's disappearance, her family tried to create some semblance of normalcy. Fred and Rachel focused on raising Kelly's daughter Tammy, who, as we said before, was just 4 years old when her mom vanished. Tammy grew up surrounded by stories of her mom, but not having any closure was something that loomed over her life. Tammy's dad, Dale, kept a low profile as time went on, though he consistently and sincerely cooperated with the police throughout the investigation, and he continued to focus on rebuilding his life and supporting his daughter from afar. Years went by, and then in 2008, tragedy struck the Bergh family again. Kelly's half-brother, Dwayne Parnell, was shot and killed during a violent altercation at a Waffle House in Jacksonville, Florida. Dwayne was a construction worker who had traveled from North Carolina to Jacksonville to work on the River City Marketplace. It is believed that both Dwayne and his friend David had been drinking heavily that day. On the night of the incident, he was at a Waffle House with David when they found themselves in a heated confrontation with a couple named Barry Edward Carell and Melanie Barry Ayala. The couple accused Dwayne and David of using racial slurs towards Barry, who is a black man, and tensions quickly escalated from there, and David ended up punching Barry, and then Dwayne jumped in and got involved. Barry's girlfriend Melanie started throwing ketchup and syrup bottles at Dwayne and David in the heat of the moment, and things just were really chaotic. But witnesses said that after the initial altercation, kind of seemed to have ended, Barry went outside while Melanie paid their bill. But then the situation took a deadly turn when Barry came back into the Waffle House holding a gun. Witnesses tried to stop him from entering the building, but Barry pushed his way inside and opened fire. Both Dwayne and David were shot, leaving Dwayne dead and David critically injured. Barry and Melanie fled the scene, but they were later apprehended by police. During the trial, Barry's defense argued that the shooting was an act of self-defense and claimed that he was attacked when he went back into the restaurant and feared for his life due to the racial slurs. But prosecutors argued that the fight had actually already ended, and it was Barry who escalated the situation unnecessarily by going back into the building with a gun. In the end, Barry was convicted of third-degree murder, attempted second-degree murder, shooting deadly missiles, and 2 counts of aggravated assault. He avoided the conviction for second-degree murder, but he still got a lengthy prison sentence with a release date set for 2077. Barry has appealed his conviction multiple times, including once in 2023, but all of them have been denied so far.
In 2020, nearly 4 decades after Kelly vanished, her family was still fighting for answers. Her sister Elaine was at a polling station in Virginia when she crossed paths with Delegate Tony Wilt and took this opportunity to share Kelly's story and to explain her desire and goal of passing a law that would require there be 2 employees working overnight shifts at convenience stores as a safety measure, which, yes, that is incredible.
100%.
However, we can support that we want to. Tony was actually familiar, though, with Kelly's case and said he was shocked that nothing had been done and that nobody was helping the family. The very next day, the Harrisonburg Police Department called and said they were going to reopen Kelly's case. Detective Brooke Wetherill from the Major Crimes Unit was assigned as the lead investigator. She took the case very seriously, and she even carried Kelly's case with her when she got a promotion within the department. Another detective who was related to the original lead investigator, which was Lieutenant Myers, also took an interest in the case, which Elaine actually thinks was motivated by a desire to make amends for the strained relationship her family had with Lieutenant Myers all those years ago. The reopening of the investigation brought a fresh hope, and soon new leads started coming in. Remember that evidence that we mentioned earlier, the evidence that was from vacuuming the trunk of a car that Kelly had reported seeing? Well, the contents were bagged for evidence. But now in 2020, they finally got around to actually sending it off for testing. So they've had it.
My gosh. It's so frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. Because why?
Why do it? Why do it if you're not going to do anything with
collect it if you're going to just let it sit there for decades? That makes no sense.
It's infuriating. At this time, though, it was also revealed that the trunk of that same car that they vacuumed to get evidence also had a shoe print from a tennis shoe that matched Kelly's shoe size. While it's unclear the type of shoes Kelly was wearing when she was abducted, this detail does add further suspicion. In 2022, Detective Wetherill revealed that she'd been working with the DMV to gather records of vehicles that matched the description of the car reported that night. But she admitted that there were some challenges with investigating a case that spanned over 4 decades. She said, quote, "This happened 40 years ago, and the people we need to talk to are not always still around," end quote. For Elaine, though, the fight is far from over. She doesn't know if the evidence testing has revealed any new answers yet, but she remains committed in her pursuit for justice for Kelly.
By 2023, Detective Wetherill had spent years unraveling the mystery of Kelly's disappearance and had pieced together fragments of evidence that had grown colder with time. She outlined hurdles with the investigation, including sorting through this evidence and figuring out what was most valuable to the investigation. She said, "Having DNA is not as simple as it sounds. Anything we have might have DNA on it. What if that sample is degraded? The biggest challenge for us has just been identifying and getting clean samples, which we learned so much when we got to visit the Othram lab in Texas about how it really isn't just as simple as having, even just like having a little bit of DNA. Like there's so much more that goes into it than that.
Yeah.
And so that part alone is kind of frustrating, just realizing that like even if you have like things that you need, you could still be missing. There's some component that like is preventing you
Right.
from really being able to get to the next level. But Detective Wetherell said she was determined to move the investigation forward despite these obstacles. And over time, more progress was made. She re-interviewed every suspect that had previously been questioned and ruled them all out until she only had one single individual left. According to Elaine, the remaining suspect is a man Kelly went to high school with. He had a history of indecent exposure and obscene phone calls, and he matched the sketch from the case and even owned a car that resembled the one from the description in the reports. But Elaine says she doesn't think Kelly actually knew this man very well, even though they went to school together. After all, Kelly had become a mom very young and got married to Dale, so her social life really didn't have, a lot going on. She didn't have a lot of time for friendships outside of her immediate circle. Elaine said that the man in question is aware that he's being looked into as a suspect. At one point, the Harrisonburg crime solvers received an anonymous letter about Kelly's case that mentioned the suspect by name, a name that has actually not been publicly released. Detective Wetherell responded to the letter but never heard back, but she hopes that whoever wrote it will respond and that they might hold the key to arresting the suspect. In 2024, Kelly's husband Dale passed away at the age of 67. His obituary stated in part, in 1982, his wife Kelly Bergh was abducted, and he always had hopes of her return. They had a beautiful daughter, Tammy. As of today, the suspect still has not been named, and Kelly is still missing.
Kelly's case is still unsolved, but her sister Elaine refuses to let her memory fade away. She told the Daily News Report that Detective Wetherell had paid more attention to this case in the last 2 years than anyone at the police department had done before. Elaine and Rachel work tirelessly to keep Kelly's story in the public eye, and they cling to hope that one day someone will come forward with vital information. Elaine said that some people question how they can still have hope after 40 years have gone by, and she said that sometimes hope gets distant, but you have to keep that hope alive. Elaine told NBC, quote, "This man took away a sister, daughter, mother, and my best friend. He took away her future, her chance to have more children, and to enjoy being a grandma to 2 amazing little boys. I never knew I could miss her more today than I did when she first went missing," end quote, which just breaks my heart.
So sad.
Yeah. Elaine is convinced that people know more than they're letting on and says she's had unsettling encounters over the years that have led her to believe that. One time, the mother of her son's high school friend mentioned needing to talk to Elaine about Kelly, but then later avoided the topic entirely. Detective Wetherell tried to get in touch with the woman herself, but she ignored the calls. Encounters like this have led Elaine to believe that people are scared to come forward with what they might know. Along the way, though, Elaine has found support in unexpected places. If you're a regular listener of our show, you might remember us talking about the cases of Emma Compton and Brenda Lambert, 2 women who have a similar case as Kelly's. Elaine has actually made friends with Emma's sister Shauna and Brenda's sister Christy, and the 3 women now call themselves sisters and take comfort in sharing their experiences.
So just to recap everything that we have kind of talked about today, Kelly Bergh was 20 years old when she went missing on June 18th, 1982. She was last seen at the Imperial Gas Station on South Main Street in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Kelly was 5'1" with brown hair and brown eyes. She weighed between 100 and 120 pounds. She had a partial dental plate that replaced her 2 front teeth and a scar on the back of her head, as well as one on her forehead along her hairline and a scar on her right wrist. She also wore contact lenses and glasses. At the time of her disappearance, Kelly was wearing a light-colored pinstripe sweater or top and tan or cream-colored slacks. She also wore a Turner Ashby High School class ring with the initials KJB inscribed inside. The ring might have a peridot stone in it. The suspect was a thin white male between the ages of 20 to 25 with shoulder-length blonde hair and wearing a light-colored shirt. He was driving a silver or gray vehicle that was possibly a Ford. So here are some ways that you can help. You can share this episode and you can share Kelly's flyer so that her story gets spread around and might encounter somebody who has information in the case. And as always, we will have a link to the flyer in our show notes. We'll post it on our social media so you guys can find that there. And Elaine hopes that the suspect sees the information about Kelly being spread and knows that Elaine isn't going to stop fighting for her sister until justice is served. Those with information about Kelly's case should contact Detective Wetherell at 540-432-7788 or by email at Leslie, that's LESLIE.Wetherell at harrisonburgva.gov. And those who wish to remain anonymous can call Crime Solvers at 540-574-5050.
Man, one thing that really just hit me was how the quick succession of the phone calls. It was like 2 minutes, then 1 minute. It was clearly upsetting her. It was, if you're calling back to back on 911, like something is way wrong and it should be.
Yes, and it's clear. Exactly. And it's clear that something very chaotic is unfolding like right that minute. To have the back-to-back calls, that you can really tell that she was kind of not sure what was going on and then realized very quickly that this was actually something somebody needed to come out and help her. And that is like the most terrifying thing for me, is to think of her calling 911 for help and then them arriving 1 minute later, 1 minute too late. That's just heartbreaking.
And I do just love that Elaine has found support with Emma's sister Shauna and Brenda's sister Christy.
Too.
That's something that those of us who haven't experienced that, or a family member missing or anything like that, that we can never truly understand. Try as you may, we're never going to have that. We're never going to be able to empathize. But these three having each other to lean on and to support, they know exactly what the other one's going through, or at least to some degree. And just, I don't know, it warms my heart to know that they're
all incredible. They really are. We've worked with all of them, to put together stories about their loved ones. So it really makes me so happy to hear that they have found some support in each other.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. That was the episode for this week. If you are looking for more content, check us out on Patreon. Otherwise, we will see you back next week. Same time, same place, new story.
Have a great week.
Bye.